Call this meeting to order at 1:02 p.m., the Special Rules Committee meeting. And Councilwoman Fulbright, would you deliver the invitation?
Yes. Stand, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this wonderful day that you have given us. We are so thankful for all the blessings that you bestow upon us, little things that we take for granted every day that other people in other countries may not be able to have. We ask that you be with us throughout this meeting, give us guidance and civility for one another, and may we have a great outcome with our meeting. We ask you to bless all of our troops overseas and those at home, and be with those who are having a hard time with the heat. We just ask you to bless us and continue to watch over us. Thank you for all these things. Amen.
Amen.
Written roll call.
Meredith Fraley.
Here.
Bill England.
Here.
Bill John Baker.
Here.
Jack Henry.
Here.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Julia Coates. Bradley Cobb.
Honey.
Joe Crittenden.
Here.
Buddy Fishinghop. Janelle Fulbright.
Here.
Don Garvin.
Honey.
Chuck Huskey Jr.
Here.
Tina Glory Jordan.
Present.
Curtis Snell.
Here.
Chris Soap. David Thornton.
Present.
Kara Cowan Long.
Honey.
We do have a quorum.
We have a quorum. On our agenda today is an important resolution to consider. And the purpose is to discuss and possibly take action on recommending that an independent election service company be contracted by the Election Commission to help in conducting the upcoming runoff and, if necessary, any special elections. And our focus today is on the objective of the meeting and not to relitigate what has already been litigated. And since elections are an expression of the people's will and are the foundation of our government, the Cherokee people need assurance that the votes cast are counted and canvassed properly. They deserve a fair and credible election process. So the sole purpose in scheduling this meeting is to help ensure a fair and efficient runoff election and hopefully regain the lost credibility in the Cherokee Nation election process. Many people have come into my store. I've seen them, talked with them at gathering places, and the statement is consistent. We need to do something because they don't trust our election process. And that's something from an urgency standpoint is to have an independent party who is experienced in the administration of elections help the Election Commission administer a verifiable runoff election. If any action is approved, a special council meeting has been scheduled at 3 p.m. today to allow for discussion and possible action in this meeting today, this rules meeting. And to allow for that, each council person will have 3 minutes for discussion. And if there's time left over after everyone has talked, we'll allow an additional 2 minutes for you to speak a second time. And Mr. Henry there will be our timekeeper. And at this point, I would entertain a motion and second to approve the resolution, and we'll open for discussion.
For approval.
Second.
Moved in second. Now we're open for discussion. Yes, Mr. Henry.
Madam Chairman, I would recommend some small changes to the, when looking at the resolution, I would recommend some small changes to broaden the scope of the resolution. Right now it says that independent election service company to conduct future election tabulations. I believe that concerns that we've heard is not only just the tabulations, but I've heard concerns about polling districts, say precincts, etc. So I would recommend that we change the word company to organization. That would include such organizations like the Carter Center for Democracy and Election Management, and to strike the word conduct to observe in the title, and then future election strike tabulations to processes. I think that would broaden the scope of the resolution to include not just the tabulations, but observations as to precinct workers, et cetera, if it is the election commission's desire to follow this recommendation.
Entertain a motion or as suggested to amend the agenda item.
Oh,
As the second, I'll make it as a friendly amendment if the primary motion would accept.
yes.
Dr. Cobb, you make the motion?
Yes, ma'am. I'll make that motion.
You got a second?
Actually, I think they accepted it as a friendly motion.
Friendly
I mean, as a
amendment.
Friendly amendment.
Okay.
I think I was the second.
And that would entail in the whereas or the resolve clauses, changing the corresponding language, changing from company to organization and tabulations to process. Down there.
The last,
Well, it reads that the council calls upon the election commission to hire and engage in
Oh,
an
okay.
election service organization of high reputation to observe and assist in the tabulation or to assist in the processes.
all mine's clear.
Of voting in the upcoming election.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hembry. Okay, discussion? Yes, Mr. Hoskin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. One question I have, I mean, I guess the Election Commission's obligated somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 to Mr. Rainey's firm. And the Rainey firm work took a period of time. I just wonder, has the Election Commission weighed in on whether they are able to contract in this short period of time? Do they have some other firms in mind? Is that going to be part of a presentation today? Those are my questions before we wade too deeply into this.
We do have a list of, I think Shelley handed those out to you, a list of recommendations. Of course, we can't tell them who to contract, but these are.
Well, I understand that. We can
recommendations.
certainly tell them who not to contract with. I have a particular firm in mind, but I just wonder if the Election Commission, are they here today? Is any representative here today to tell us what they think?
No, I haven't invited any of them. Just Mr. Hoskin, he'd like to comment.
To address the question of Councilperson Hopkins, what I would perceive is that if a resolution passes, and we are aware of what a resolution is, it's a statement of will by the council. It's not a requirement, it's not have to carry the force of effective law. It is basically a recommendation to the Election Commission to bring forward another set of eyes on the process, and then some more boots on the ground to the process, to instill public confidence. I would recommend that if this resolution should pass, that we forward it to the Election Commission along with a list of organizations that I know I have researched and we have handed out. Those organizations include the Carter Center, who has done, used to be known as the Carter Commission, which in 1999 did similar actions for the Cherokee Nation. There's the Center for Democracy and Election Management, the Verified Voting Foundation, the National Democratic Institute. That's a small thing, not a big. Democracy Watch. We could recommend a major state election board such as the Tulsa County Election Board to assist. There's also an organization called the Election Center, and we could forward them to the Election Commission along with from estimates of what it may cost to do this. And the estimates that I've come across from anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000, and with the mindset that you are the council, as the keeper of the purse strings, and any budget modifications need to be made, you're going to come through this body.
So if I could follow up, so these would be, I mean, the Carter Center is a perfect example. These are firms to come in and oversee, not to execute the actual election, which Mr. Rainey's firm is now in a contract to do. So does this resolution contemplate that Mr. Rainey's firm would continue to administer the election, and then there would be this other entity paid to oversee it? I'm mindful that the Election Commission makes this call, but that said, is that what we're talking about here?
Well, yeah, that would be the recommendation to the election commission, because we could not require them, as stated in the resolution. The election commission is an independent body set up under Article 9 of the Constitution. And plus, probably more importantly, is the logistics of hiring a new election service to actually conduct the election. Being mindful that the absentee ballot request, or the actual ballot, went out yesterday and today, in this election. So we're in the middle of the stream in that process. So I think the one thing that this resolution can achieve is to instill more public confidence, or restore public confidence in the election process by having, like, as I said, another set of eyes on the whole process.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Whatever time I have, I would like to reserve if I could.
Let's reserve what time he has left.
Actually, I did not start to talk about, I thought that was a question.
Yeah, free time.
Wow. I could use it.
Ms. Count Watts?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So there's a couple of things I'm trying to get my arms around. First of all, our election law is clear. We cannot amend any election law so far prior to an actual election. If
Actually,
people are
that-
looking for a remedy on actual election law, we can't do that at this point necessarily.
Well,
Is that true?
There is, that part of the law has been deleted. You can amend it, but it would be extremely problematic at this point to amend the election law in that, as I said earlier, we're in the process, of this runoff election. I mean, it's,
Okay, thank you. Is there anything that prevents us from hiring one of these oversight, like the Carter Commission, for example, which we've done in the past? Although it is an independent election commission and we as elected officials should not interfere in that process, is there anything that prevents us from just hiring them independently to oversee the process? Would that still be interfering with the independent election commission? Because what I'm hearing is we're going to ask them to hire the independent party, and I don't know that that does what we would like to do.
Well, to answer your question, the reason it's styled this way is that, well, in 1999, the election commission contracted with the Carter Commission.
Okay, so that was a very good report, the Carter Commission report.
And also to ease anyone's concern about quote-unquote interference with the process and not wanting to be accused of interfering with the process. That's why we styled it as a recommendation to the election commission to do this. Now, the council very well may be within their own purview, have the ability to hire independently such organization, and if that's the will of the council, it's the will of the council. But I guess in abundance of caution, this resolution was styled as a recommendation to the.
One last question, Madam Speaker. So at this point, observing the Supreme Court proceedings, any findings since the time of the election, there's been no violation of election law. There's been maybe some human error, but all the ballots are secured. So there hasn't necessarily been integrity issues either with our law or the actual proceedings, correct?
Well, the one thing, and to keep in mind with the admonition of the chairperson not wanting to delve into the matters that are currently under litigation, so I think we would hesitate from debating what the Supreme Court has heard before it right now. The purpose of the resolution is that, regardless, and as Ms. Speaker Purdy stated, we're not here to point fingers at any one person or any organization of the Cherokee Nation, but the perception is what it is. The perception in the public that I know each one of you have heard is that there is a question of confidence in the election process, and that this resolution is an attempt to bring someone else of high national reputation, hopefully, to help rebuild and restore that confidence.
I said it was last.
How much time should I have left there?
Okay. Madam Chair, I need some direction here. I am not counting questions to me as time. If you wish me to do that, I will. I was concerning the time as to actual debate on the resolution itself. Should I keep track on questions?
Oh, as long as it doesn't turn into a debate.
I understand that.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So if we wanted an independent accountant to count ballots or audit firm, we would need to specify that in this resolution, correct?
I would recommend that.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Crittenden.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Todd, I guess I've got a concern because we're talking about, as you mentioned, something midstream of an election. We're talking about hiring these folks to do a independent election service company to conduct future election tabulations. I'm reading some of this stuff in this other handout, and one of the concerns they have, it says to fully audit, it would have been preferable for the auditors to have been involved with the beginning of our process, from registration to absentee requests to training the poll workers. Since we are at midstream, it may not be effective. Now, as you mentioned a while ago, the absentee ballots hit the mail stream yesterday and today, as I understand. Remember, the ballots from the first election had the deal with the number 2 pencil on them. I haven't seen a ballot, but I've been told that's been removed. But they left off, if I understand it right, the requirement to do it in ink. So there's still that confusion out there. So by the time we get somebody hired to help us with our naught from naught, you know, like Jethro, we have Jethro a little bit, you know, a lot of this process is already going to be gone. So, I mean, that's my concern. I don't know how to fix it, but there's some concern there. That's all I have.
Point of information, Madam Speaker, I apologize. Would you mind reading the friendly amendment so that I can take another note down? I apologize.
I'll restate the friendly amendment.
The friendly amendment would change the title to read, "A resolution calling upon the Cherokee Nation Election Commission to obtain independent election service organization to observe future election processes." And then it would change now therefore be it resolved by the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council clause to read that the council calls upon the Cherokee Nation Election Commission to hire or engage an independent election service organization of high reputation to assist in the processes of votes in any upcoming elections.
Clear, Mr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Baker?
Yes, and being somewhat intimately involved, I'd like to offer a friendly amendment that would request the Election Commission to allow for each campaign in sufficient numbers to view each table where ballots are being hand counted. I think it would have taken a great deal of confusion and a lot of mistrust and a lot of problems if the Election Commission would have allowed each campaign to have a watcher at each table. When we went in with the judges, we were allowed that. It went quick, it went smooth. I think, you know, everybody was satisfied. And the way that they did the election, where they only had one watcher covering multitudes of things, I just, you know, if you want openness and transparency and everybody happy, then set, you know, a lawyer from one camp here and a lawyer at the other camp there, and let them watch the process and see that everything is fine. So I'm going to put that in the form of a motion.
Point of order. I'm sorry, but is this speaking to future elections?
No, it's talking about a motion onto this as a recommendation of the Election Commission to allow for sufficient numbers to view each table which ballots are being hand
I got a
counted.
point of
Madam Speaker.
clarification as the
Just a
first.
moment. Mr. Baker has the floor.
my fault.
Continue.
And like I say, it's a form of a motion to an amendment to this document as a recommendation to the Election Commission.
Okay, Ms. Countwatch, point of order.
So, I thought this resolution was simply to the conduct of future elections, not speaking to what has already happened in this past election, which is what I'm hearing. I mean, I guess we're anticipating a hand count, or are we gonna hand count every precinct as everybody cast a ballot? I'm confused at
Okay.
this point. What the intentions
Clarification.
are.
The Election Commission hand counts absentee ballots that don't muster through the machine. And so there's, in this last election, they counted 270, 200, 200 and some votes, but it took them 12 hours to do it. And all I'm asking is that we have a set of eyes from each campaign while they're doing that process. And I think it would have cleared up all kinds of problems. And I think it's a good idea, and I would think that the chief would think it's a good idea too.
Dr. Cobb?
I'm maybe coming from a little bit bigger picture standpoint, and this is probably a question for the council attorney and for you. I was under the impression what we're doing here today is a resolution. We are suggesting to the Election Commission that we feel it's necessary or not necessary, whatever the vote goes, to hire a special election service company to come in and observe. Does that include getting down to point-by-point clarifications of what we expect? Because I'm not necessarily for or against this friendly amendment, but we're getting into territory where now we're getting very specific about what we're requesting. So are we here to request that they take a serious look at hiring an election company, or are we getting more detailed on our direction to the Election Commission? That's the question that I need answered before we talk about friendly amendment here.
Point of order, Madam Speaker, just to clarify, do we have a motion to amend on the floor? Does it need a
Right
second?
now, we're clarifying his motion.
Being mindful that this resolution is a recommendation. We're not here amending any laws of Title 26, okay? The amendment as spoken would be a suggestion to the Election Commission. It says recommend, I believe. A suggestion to the Election Commission that they allow additional watchers at any table by which there's a hand-counted vote. It is not a call to conduct all votes by hand count. It is a recommendation that if there's hand counts, that there be watchers by both campaigns or both camps. Right now, what is looming before us is runoff elections. Mr. Cobb has a runoff election. Mr. Joe Crittenden has a runoff election. Chris has a runoff election. Harley has a runoff election. Jody has a runoff election. So those are the in the open seat. I've got that. But those are the elections that we're talking about. It would be an assumption if there were any other elections on the horizon. But at this point, what we would, it would be a suggestion. I mean, it's, resolutions are what they are, so to speak. So, and it can be as general or as detailed as the council wants it to be.
With that clarification, Madam Speaker, I'd offer a second and just a brief remark on my second.
Mr. Thornton, did you have a question on clarification?
No.
Okay, I thought you had your
You
hand.
mean on this motion?
Yes,
No.
okay.
Can I ask Councilor Baker to restate that, if at all possible?
Be it further resolved that the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council requests that the Election Commission allow watchers from each campaign in a sufficient number to view each table at which ballots are being hand counted.
Point of clarification, I'm not a lawyer, sufficient number.
That's an interpretation up to the Election Commission.
Yep. Mhm. And.
I'm sorry.
And Mr. Hoskin, you second?
Yeah, briefly, Madam Speaker, I mean, in amending the resolution the first time, we've really reduced it to a resolution which asks the Election Commission to allow additional scrutiny of its process through the Carter Commission, what have you. And the councilman's amendment, the councilman's motion is an additional scrutiny of that process, scrutiny that was woefully lacking. We think somebody like the Carter Commission would bring that common sense, or something else, some other entity would bring that kind of common sense to the process. That's fine, but I think there was a glaring deficiency, and that was, were there enough eyes on that process? I can't imagine anyone objecting to additional eyes on the counting of ballots, not for any good reason. So I think it's a common sense amendment, and I think we should incorporate it here. It's certainly within the same spirit of this resolution. So with that, I second.
Mr. Thornton?
I'll talk to Mr. Baker here in just a minute. Would this cover the walk-in vote? Isn't that an absentee vote?
It could. I'm actually speaking to the hand counted ballots, because when you walk into absentee, you're running it through a machine, and they've got watchers there, but really I'm more narrowly saying, hey,
Who has watchers there?
there's a marshal at the front door, at least one. The Election Commission has hired a couple of watchers, one on either side of the machine, and then actually the Election Commission stands in the lobby. And they pretty much,
Is there a watcher from each camp that's running,
there isn't,
like they are in precincts?
and that's a good idea.
Well, the reason I bring this point up, and since we're on this point, I had one son named James Thornton who went in early and voted. I had a grandson that it was his first time to vote. He's 19 years old. He registered to vote. He went in early and voted at the Election Commission. When I voted at buy-in, and my son, my other son, James Thornton showed up on the books that he had already voted. David Wallace Thornton III didn't show up that he had voted. So I went over here and bought a list of who voted in my district. David Thornton III didn't show up on that list. So his vote evidently was taken out, or there was a mistake made somewhere. So in essence, it was his first time to ever get to vote. He was happy about that. He had his little red and white card. He went in and voted, and his vote didn't count. So I don't know if it would help to have watchers from each camp, just like they are in the precincts, or what would help this, but it needs some help somewhere. Thank you.
Any further discussion on Mr. Baker's motion? All minds clear. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion on the resolution as amended? Any further discussion on the resolution? Yes.
On the recommendations that we're thinking about sending over of organizations, is there some reason why we didn't put the Bureau of Indian Affairs?
I didn't make up the list. That came from Mr. Hembry.
I made up the list. The Bureau of Indian Affairs, first of all, is not an election organization. And they run secretarial elections for tribes that are unable to carry out their process. But it's my understanding that the intent of the resolution was to bring forth a national, highly recommended organization that is in the business of overseeing the election process. And again, it's a list of recommendations to the
to the Election Commission.
I would just recommend that it be added to the list. Recommending that the Bureau of Indian Affairs be added to this list of recommendations.
Madam Chairman, the list is not part of the resolution itself. You know, if this passes, you would, any one of you would be free to contact an election commissioner and tell them your idea of who they should consider bringing in. So it's not an official part of the resolution.
I don't think you meant it as a part of the resolution, did you?
No, this is not going to be sent then. If the resolution is approved, this will not be sent along with the resolution?
No, it's not a part of the
It's
resolution.
not an official part of the resolution. We can send any one of you as counselors could send recommendations. I created this list out of research of national and international organizations that do this kind of work. And this is a product of my own and without any input of any other counselors. I think it would be appropriate to give them a list of organizations just to, for nothing else, give them a starting point. But
Okay, we're focused here on the resolution. We have a motion to approve it as amended. We're discussing the resolution now, and Mr. Buzzard.
I got a couple of questions just for clarification. In this resolution, is it asking for a report from the observers?
that would be beyond our beyond the scope of the resolution. In any instance in which an organization like this is engaged, there is always a follow-up report. So
we assume that.
I'm going to assume that there will be a follow-up report with criticisms and recommendations.
Okay, and then I have a follow-up question, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Does this include precinct observation also? I don't know that it said that in here, but does it include that?
Again, that would be a scope of as to the engagement of the detail that the organization would be contracted for. And we're not creating the contract right here. The Election Commission, if they chose to take our recommendation, would create the contract. Now,
the reason I bring this up is I've had some comments about different happenings in different precincts. Things weren't handled the same in precinct 1 that were in precinct 3. And so I'm just wondering about, how far out they're going to go as far as the observation goes. So, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Thornton.
Yes, Todd, tell me if I'm wrong or not.
No, you're right.
2003, we got together a vote of the people.
Correct.
That vote of the people was to keep the BIA out of our affairs. That vote passed in every district, which there were 15 districts at that time. Every district voted to keep the BIA out of our business. So I don't think I can be for the BIA coming in and having anything to do with our business. So that's the way I'll have to vote on this issue if it comes up.
But again, that's not part of the resolution.
Yeah, but again, my people voted against it, BIA,
Mr. Baker.
and everyone else's.
Dr. Cobb.
I'm going to expand on what Mr. Thornton said. And sometimes this is, and I don't know the answer to this, and I am asking you, Todd. As an elected official, I'm tasked with voting yes or no on a resolution here. The list is not attached to the resolution. But if someone went over to the Election Commission and said, we would like this, to look at this, or we would like for you to look at this. I'm voting on something and I'm leaving the entire decision up to someone else. That's essentially what's happening here. And it's very similar in my office when somebody comes in and says, well, I've already had an exam, I just want you to do this. No, because you walk in my office, I'm responsible for that patient, period. So my point to that is, I am opposed to the BIA coming in and doing anything. If my vote as an elected official was yes on this resolution, and then the election commission decided, well, we're gonna pick the BIA, then by default, I voted yes to bring the BIA in. So my question to you is, how as an elected official, do I combat that problem?
Well, you don't, the short answer, and I prefer to answer questions directly. I mean, what this resolution does, okay, in its purest form, is ask the election commission, hey, we think you need help, why don't you get some, okay? And if the, and maybe I should have not even refrained from making a list, trying to be a little bit more helpful than probably what I should have, all right? Yeah. Here is a list of organizations that I researched that would meet the resolution requirement of high national reputation. I would, well, should I even say it? I don't know. I don't think the BIA has a high national reputation. So they may be. I hope I have not offended any BIA employees in here. But getting that, it's when you mention the BIA in this instance, it's almost like a square peg in a round hole. They are not a national election organization. Just like they shouldn't, with this organization, with this resolution, the election commission shouldn't go out and hire NASCARs. Okay? It's not a national, it's a race car organization. It's not an election organization. It's a square peg in a square hole. What I want to attempt to say is to keep the resolutions focused as to, we're just saying, if you need help, go get it. Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Bishop, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, Todd, I got a question. How many, I've heard about the Carter administrations, and I've read part of the suggestions and heard it was a good suggestion, a good report. How many did we implement?
I have not read that report in quite some time. So
I don't remember implementing it either.
I have not read the report in quite some time. Few, if any. I would
Okay,
answer.
on chapter 2, page 17 in this big booklet they give us, it talks about policies and procedures. And the bottom paragraph talks about a consultant working under the election office is considered staff. However, they should be monitored as closely as vendor personnel. There's a whole list on here of things that really affected this election. Because I didn't realize so many logs, so many entries, working in pairs, never allow a personnel to access the system, not even if they tell you it's for maintenance. Why? Because it can void a certification. So would you please look at chapter 2, page 17, in the meantime after this, and look there for good suggestions on the security of it?
Yes, and I will, and I appreciate the Secretary of State's efforts in putting this information together. I've just seen it. I have not reviewed any of it, but it is the United States Election Assistance Commission's election management guidelines, and it's also a copy of the Carter reports of the '99 election. It's going to be useful information. I will review it. Would recommend everyone review it.
Okay, and Todd, I realize this is supposed to fix some doubt that people have cast on our election, but the problem my people had nothing to do with this. Unless we fix the problems they had that day of voting, they're still going to be hollering. My precinct voted over 3,000 people. One precinct, Wilma P. I think it was only second to Tahlequah's in number of voters. When you have people wait in line for 30 minutes to vote in 100-plus weather, I know of 9 people that turned around and left. A lot of them saying it's deliberate. A lot of them saying the current chief wouldn't carry Adair County, and that's why they did it on purpose. And then I have, some people saying the opposite. But I know for a fact it's going to cast dispersion on this election.
Yes, please.
That was in our control. And she just put a jab at the chief who's not even here to defend himself. That's inappropriate.
Is it inappropriate or was it against the rules? I'm sorry. Lord knows I've been inappropriate before. Anyway,
Giving out hamburgers and
No
liquor is
names or no-
inappropriate, and I guess we're.
No names, no.
We need to
oh,
form,
okay, okay.
Madam
I see the
Chairman,
current sheet. I
we
did
need to
not name
form in
names.
this.
Yeah.
this-
Quiet.
Okay. But anyway, Todd, that's the problem my people are having physically with voting that night. So could you address that to the election office?
Elections are, there's many moving parts to an election, and part of it, especially in a high populated area, is there are going to be lines. I will talk with election commissioners to see if anything can be done to speed up the process at the highly populated precinct offices.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Soap.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Todd, that you have to talk to the election commission to try to expedite the processing of the voters, and I think that calls into question what is our process with interfacing with the election commission. I find it strange that we're talking to you about these issues instead of maybe representatives of the election commission itself. But my issue with this particular resolution is that we're specifically calling out the tabulation of the votes that were cast. And to me, that's probably the most simple part of the overall election process, and all the things that have to be done in order to lead up to this final counting of votes. And so are what you're proposing, or what you authored, or what was asked to author, is that we just hire a firm that just specifically does the counting, and that's primarily it?
The original.
Because these other organizations that I see on this, they kind of have a large scope, but are we limiting their scope to just the tabulation of the cast ballots, or are we also encouraging them to come in and maybe go out to the polls and observe and things like that? So what exactly are we trying to accomplish here with this resolution?
That's why it was a recommendation and a friendly amendment to modify the word tabulation and change it to processes, because we do believe we don't want to limit the scope of what someone would come in and oversee.
So we're talking about the whole election process, not just necessarily the tabulation. Now, does that eliminate any names on this list that you provided us?
No.
Okay, so they're all in that business of doing the whole election process then?
Correct.
Ms. Coates.
Todd, I want to ask if I share the concerns. I'm going back to the potential involvement of the BIA in the observation of this election coming up. And I share the concerns that have been expressed by many people here. I think that when we have worked so hard through a constitutional convention in 1999, putting things on the ballot, a clear vote on the part of the people that they want the BIA out of our election process, that to bring them back in at this point would be highly, highly objectionable. Now, you made a statement just a moment ago that we could not control, essentially, what the Election Commission chose to do in terms of the vendors that are on the list that you've provided us. But I wonder if that is, in fact, the case. I might tend to disagree with that, because my question to you is, would it be possible to put something into this resolution that would specify that this is to be a private, non-federal election service, and thereby at least have assurance that one that many of us would find objectionable as a possibility could be prohibited?
The reason why I drafted the resolution in broad terms is to make everyone comfortable on two pillars. Number one, that we are not interfering with the Election Commission. We don't want any. I do not want to place any of my clients here with someone with an accusation that they are interfering with the election process, which is contrary to which we have a prohibition against that in our statute. I want everyone to feel very comfortable about that. Number two, I want to respect the independence of the Election Commission, which is set up as an independent body under Article 9 of our Constitution. If we get too detailed on saying, what you can and cannot do, those accusations can be made. It's on an abundance of caution that I write the resolution as broadly as possible and give them recommendations, again, of highly national organizations with high reputations in election processes. And again, I'll state that the BIA is not an election service. It is an arm of the federal government, and I would, I'll say again, it's a square peg in a round hole. It just cannot fit in this instance.
Well, I understand that, and I appreciate that. Let me ask you then, in your opinion, would the Election Commission have the authority to call in the BIA to act in this fashion?
If I was their attorney, I would highly recommend against it, and I don't think they would. But again,
Their attorney, well, okay, I won't go there, but anyway. Constitutionally, would they have any right to do that? Have any authority?
well, shooting from the hip, I would say no. But again, that is an armchair legal opinion, and
Would it be your opinion that, that if they were to do so, we would have room to file a legal objection to that then, on a constitutional basis?
depending on what, I'll give you the answer that lawyers love to give, probably, or maybe. Okay, I really can't give you, a definite answer on that. But can I, Madam Chairman, if I could?
Well, I'd like to, I'm 2 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would like to still hold the floor.
No, go ahead,
I'll
go
yield
ahead.
it to you, but I would like to come back to me.
At
Yeah.
a time limit.
Okay. There has been, mention of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They have had a long history, obviously, with Indian tribes. For the most part, that history has been a bad one. We have cast off the yoke of the Bureau of Indian Affairs in the approval of legislation that has come from that comes from the Cherokee Nation. We must also recognize that we are a sovereign, domestic, dependent nation. We carry the many attributes of sovereignty, and we must exercise those attributes of sovereignty. Obviously, one of those biggest attributes is the conduct of your elections. The election process undoubtedly has had some questions, and that's why we're here to pass to consider this resolution, is to restore public confidence in the election process. Now, I will tell you that I believe that it would be a step backwards if we invited the Bureau of Indian Affairs to oversee our election process, because I believe that would be an affront to our sovereignty. We can conduct our own business. We've hit a bump in the road, and we're asking for an election service to come in and oversee it. I think that is a much different situation in asking for that than asking for the Bureau of Indian Affairs to come back in and oversee it. That's my legal and personal opinion.
Ms. Coates?
Madam Speaker, I would offer a motion to this amendment then, or, I'm sorry, a motion to this resolution that we specifically directs that we will not include the Bureau of Indian Affairs or federal marshals in the oversight of the upcoming runoff election. And I make that motion.
Second?
And a second. Any discussion? Yes.
When federal marshals exclude our Cherokee Nation Marshal Service because they are considered federal marshals.
Are they not tribal law enforcement?
There's no question that they're also federal.
But they're also federal marshals.
I'll withdraw that aspect of it then.
Restate your motion.
So the motion would be, which would not include the Bureau of Indian Affairs in the oversight of the runoff election.
All minds clear? Mr. Crittenden?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
If I'm counting right, we got 8 work days before Election Day. Time is short. our legal counsel has mentioned boots on the ground or something to that effect, extra set of eyes, whatever, however you want to refer to it. Our funding comes from our federal government, folks. I don't particularly care if it's the BIA, the FBI, the IRS, the Army, Navy, or the Marines. I think another set of eyes would have been really good in the general election. We might not be here today had that been the case. So I just wanted to, that's my feelings about eyes and who we might get or might not get. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
I have a comment. I think we're getting too specific when we're telling them someone wanted to include and you want to exclude. I think we're getting too specific. That's the Election Commission's job. And these list of companies or organizations that we provided is strictly that. It's a recommendation. And it's not our job to tell them who to hire. That's their responsibility. So I'll vote no on this motion. I think we're getting, not because I want them in here or don't want them in here, I think we're becoming too specific. Ms. Buller-Jordan?
Well, I think I started the whole course of this conversation. Yes, it did. And my understanding was when my discussion was taking place, that I had been given an assurance that this list was not going with the resolution.
It is not a part of the resolution.
So I'm not sure how we got to the point we got to, because if this is not going anywhere, then why are we even now trying to exclude organizations?
That's merely just a list of recommendations. And I did ask Todd to research reliable firms and organizations, and that's why you have that in front of you.
But it wasn't going with the resolution.
No, it is not a part of the resolution.
So then I think I thought the discussion was at an end then. I'd found my answer, it wasn't going, so everything appeared to be great, and then we got off on this line of discussion. So I'll be voting no too. I mean, I don't want to exclude anyone, and I don't want to include anyone. And it's only a recommendation. This whole resolution is just a recommendation. I was leaning towards voting for the resolution, and now I'm going to lean towards voting the other way if we do this, so.
To Ms. Coates' motion, do we have any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
No.
Roll call. Yes, you support her resolution, her motion to exclude the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
Bradley Cobb,
No.
Joe Crittenden,
No.
Jody Fishinghawk,
No.
Meredith Fraley,
No.
Janelle Fulbright,
Yes.
Don Garvin,
Yes.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.,
No.
Hannah Glory Jordan,
No.
Chris Soap,
Yes.
Curtis Snell,
No.
David Thornton,
Yes.
Kara Callan Watts,
Yes.
Bill Anglin,
Yes.
Bill John Baker,
No.
Jack Baker,
Yes.
Harley Buzzard,
Yes.
Julia Coates.
Yes.
9 yes and 8 no.
9 yes, 8 no. So the motion does carry. Okay, any further
I would like
discussion?
to offer a motion then, that we exclude Terry Rainey and automotive election services from being used in any future elections.
I second it.
Second. See, here we go.
Yeah, exactly. Madam Chairman, if I could address, that's why we wanted to keep it as broad as possible to not go down this road. There's section 38 of the Cherokee Nation Election Code, which is interference with and improper influences of the Election Commission. When you start getting into what people, as the speaker said, what you can and can't do or directing them to do certain actions, out of abundance of caution, I wanted it, this resolution should be as broad as possible, because when you put out these directives, someone can make this accusation. And part of the penalty of being, part of the penalty of this, this section is to be disqualified from running for office. So therefore, my job is to keep my clients out of litigation's harmful way. So that's why it's important that you know, now we're going to get into who you can't, who you can't, who you can, who you can, and it, in my opinion, will jeopardize the resolution.
She has a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Coates?
I agree with Mr. Hembry as a general principle. I wanted one exclusion because that particular exclusion specifically goes to the exercise of our sovereignty as a government. This does not, and I agree with you entirely. Short of bringing in the federal government, I would agree that we don't need to be mandating anything else. But I'm sorry if people are not able to understand a qualitative difference between an entity that has directly challenged and interfered in our sovereignty for centuries at this point versus a private firm. So I just think that distinction needs to be made, and I will agree with you entirely from here on out. We need to stay out of the direction. Thank you.
Ms. Watts?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just need a clarification, because if it applies immediately to the July 23rd election, it would be unconstitutional for the Cherokee Nation Constitution, because it would be retroactive, as these people have already been hired and are in place for the July 23rd. I mean, I'm sure that if we had findings to exclude somebody at this point, that would be great too. But I just find it problematic for a number of reasons, even logistically, since they've already mailed their absentee ballots as of yesterday and today and would be receiving those. So I'm, even regardless of, I think, the outstanding arguments just made, I don't see how it's possible. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Just briefly to respond to the councilwoman. There's probably not enough time here to speak to automating election services and Mr. Rainey, so I won't burden the record with that. But I again, if we're going to go down this path, there's nothing unconstitutional about the Election Commission on its own, having heard our recommendation, paying Mr. Rainey the remainder of his $300,000 and hiring someone else. There's nothing conceivably unconstitutional about that. That doesn't so much speak to the merits of Councilwoman Jordan's amendment, but I just don't want it left, in my opinion, of course, I don't want it left in the minds of my colleagues that this is unconstitutional. My opinion is it's not. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Martin?
Are we speaking about the Rainey Company? Is that what we're talking about now? Okay. 2007, we had an election. Election was really close. The Rainey Company oversaw it. Me and another person had, was real close, and there was something filed for a recount. I had an interview from a TV station out of Fort Smith. They said, well, what do you think about this recount? And I said, I'll tell you what, I believe in these numbers because of these machines. The Rainey Company, I don't know. But these machines won't be off very much as far as the count. I said, I may even pick up 2 more votes. And after that count was over, I picked up 2 votes. I didn't have anything to do with it now, but I picked up 2 votes. So I'm not going to be against this company right now. In the future, I will think that we need to go with some all-new contracts for voting and voting precincts, you know, but as far as that's concerned, I'll have to be against this. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on Ms. Gloria Jordan's motion? For the same reason I stated earlier, I'll be voting no. It's not our job to do this. We're getting too specific, so I'll be voting no on this one also. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Yes.
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 All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Roll call.
Harley Buzzard,
Yes.
Julia Coates,
No.
Bradley Cobb,
No.
Joe Crittenden,
Yes.
Jody Fishing-Hawk,
Yes.
Meredith Fraley,
No.
Janelle Fulbright,
No.
Don Garvin,
No.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.,
Yes.
Anna Gloria Jordan,
Yes.
Chris Soap,
No.
Curtis Snell,
Yes.
David Thornton,
No.
Kara Cowan Watts,
No.
Bill England,
No.
Bill John Baker,
Abstain.
Jack Baker,
No.
we have 6 yes, 10 no, and 1 abstention.
6 yes, 10 no, 1 abstention. The motion fails. Okay, now back to the original motion to approve this resolution. Open for discussion, Mr. Baker.
Yes. If this resolution passes and we ask the election commission to hire someone, then they can come back and say it is not in our budget. We do not have the money to do so. So should we have something in this resolution stating that we will increase their budget to take care of this? That's my question.
Yeah, it's an appropriate question. Again, with the attempt of keeping the resolution as broad as possible, constitutionally, you are the keeper of the purse strings. If it wasn't in the, and this is obviously a budgetary item that the election commission did not foresee when projecting their budget, so it would only, one would assume that they would come for a budget modification that would be handled in that. If you want to make it, is that part of the resolution, to say that we'll pay for it, you can, but by just a mere constitutional process, if they ask for it, you would be the body to do the budget modification.
But my concern is that they could say, no, we won't do it because it is not in our budget, without coming to us for additional funding.
They could look at the record. Well, I mean, like I said, you want to make it part, we can draft something up real quick, But if we're asking them to do it, one would assume that we'd be willing to pay for it too.
Then I will not change the resolution at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Garvin?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of thoughts. One concerning the Carter Commission. They discovered a real tremendous thing here in the Cherokee Nation. There was people in the Cherokee Nation that had 2 council people, and then some of them just had only 1 council person. So they made that discovery, and we made I guess about 6 or 7 years discussion trying to change it. And we finally got it changed to, instead of 6 and 3, 6 had 2 council person, and the other 3 only had 1. It's very disproportional, and 1 man, 1 vote. We wasn't even close to that.
Mr. Garvin, point of order, what's that got to do with our motion here?
And we was talking about the Carter Commission, and I was wanting to enlighten what they did to help us. But I want to ask Todd to kind of take us through from the closing time until these ballots get to the county. Say we're in Nowhere, we close the polls at 7 o'clock. They have them counted by 7:30, and it takes a couple of hours to drive down here. That's 9:30. What happens after that?
And I'll do the best I can to answer that question.
So, talk about the absentees.
Okay. The election process, to best of my knowledge, is again, that's what, as to the precincts, you're right. They come down there, they tabulate them there, secure the ballots and the tabulations, drive down the ballots, post them on the wall so they could, so you know how no what voted. As to the absentee ballots, the election commission goes in at, I believe, 10 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning the day of the election. It gets the absentee box from the United States Postal Service and brings it in and starts the tabulation of the absentees then. They went back at noon and picked up to check to see if there were any further absentee ballots that had been delivered in the mail. And then they go about the process of counting those absentees, and they did so in a high-speed tabulator. And then when the election commissions, or when the election was over, they continued to handle challenge ballots and those questions, and the process ended early Sunday morning.
So putting all those together, it'd take another hour, that's 10:30. So should we have an answer by 10:30?
I don't know, sir. I mean, if you're asking me why it took so long in this election, okay.
Could it be done by 10:30?
Sure.
Okay.
But everything worked perfectly.
Mr. Hoskin?
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. Just briefly, and I don't want to burden the resolution with another amendment, but I'm just glancing through the materials, and I appreciate Secretary of State compiling those for us. They look very good. I wonder if, when you communicate this resolution, when it passes, if it passes to the Election Commission, if you could encourage them to undertake a thorough review of these materials and send these materials to them. And there's a lot in here, but just to kind of dovetail on what Councilwoman Fishing Hawk said, I mean, there's a clear provision in here, and this is one of my big concerns, is that a vendor should never be left alone with voting equipment, never be left alone in the process. That's one example of something I think the Election Commission could really take to heart. But again, I just, rather than put it in the resolution, if you would, in your letter communicating to it, just encourage them to undertake a thorough review of this packet and incorporate their suggestions where they can. Okay.
Good suggestion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes, Ms. Fulbright?
Well, I have a comment about all this. The election has caused the Cherokee people to lose confidence, and I think anything that we can do here today to restore confidence, some directive to the Election Commission, and not be too specific. We don't want to get into that because the numerous problems would be too numerous for us to mention here at this time. But there were several things that went wrong that I hope they can address in the future. And one of my real concerns was, I don't know if it was the lack of communication or whose responsibility it is when people decide that they don't want to be a Cherokee Nation tribal member anymore. Should their name be purged from the book? Is it restoration or is it the Election Commission? I think there's so many things that need to be delved into here to be looked at, and maybe a totally outside commission. I agree with Councilman Crittenden. It's too late now, I think, but in the future, maybe we could correct some of these things, and anything that we can do to restore confidence, I think we need to do. Thank you.
Ms. Coates?
We've had our confidence in the election process shaken by this, but I do want to point out in a way of reassurance that the same thing happened with the United States in the year of 2000. The same thing has happened in numerous state and local and regional elections where the vote has been extremely close. We all of us as citizens of the United States living anywhere, we hope that our elections are clean and that they're good and that they're well done. And in the main, they are. But it's in these instances when we find out, whether it's tribal, state, county, federal, whatever level we may be at, this is not a perfect process. And I hope that people will understand that, and that it will not dissuade people from continuing to participate in this process, because it is very, very, very important that people do so. And as we have just seen, every vote counts. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Mr. Thornton?
There's just one thing I want to clarify here. Whatever company or organization or whoever comes in to watch this election, I want to make sure that they're involved in every process of this election, whether it be the absentee count to the precincts being counted. Because I can remember in '99, when the Carter Company was in there, that they did watch just everything at the precinct. And I thought that was great, because they kept people from putting up signs within 300 feet, and they kept people from politicking within 300 feet. They kept a good eye on that. And I know that wasn't done this time. And I want to make sure that we have no problems with anything other than that, with that. And that they are involved in the whole process. Is that clear in this?
We're not part of creating the letter of engagement or the contract, okay? And again, that would be something very specific. If we're absolutely directing the scope of work or the scope of direction that the election commission would do. So to answer your question, no, it's not part of it. But the organizations that I've researched, that's part of the stuff they do, okay? And do we require it in the resolution? No, but that's part of their operating activity or modus operandi.
Okay. In this, we're not requiring anything. It says assist.
Again, that's the whole purpose of the resolution, is not to be too specific as to fall into any kind of trap. Yeah. So therefore, like I said, it's you hire a mechanic to fix your carburetor. You assume he's going to be working on the carburetor.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor of the resolution as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And before we amend the motion to adjourn, we have a young man that has an announcement at the request of Ms. Glory Jordan. Go ahead.
Thank you. At a recent committee meeting, there were questions about the Promise Scholarships Residence Hall at Northeastern. And so I'd like to invite you all to come look at that. It's not been worked on at all yet, so we're going to show you what we intend to do. I've got time open Thursday afternoon at 3, 4, or 5 for all of you to come look at it if you like. Councilor Jordan is recommending 4 o'clock, so we'll go with that. You're welcome to meet us at Haskell Hall Annex at Northeastern State University at 4 o'clock on Thursday. We'll have a tour for you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Entertain a yes, Mr.
This automatically moves to council. We don't have to move it there, is that correct?
Special council meeting has already been scheduled. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Moved in second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign. We are adjourned.
Well.